Welcome to another episode of True Detective Stories. Today's tale is brought to you by Ranger Harry, the oldest yet most childish forest ranger in our park. Harry's voice crackled through the radio. "How's it going?" he asked. I was stationed at the top of Fire Tower 3, with a complete 360-degree view of the entire national forest stretching all the way to the horizon. Every time he drew this post, he'd make the same stupid joke. But it was also pretty accurate: no floods, no fires, no severe weather. He'd said it so many times that I could mouth the words along with him before he even finished. Harry was okay when the pressure was low or radiation minimal, but spending an entire weekend shift with him? That was rough. Can't see what's happening on your end. Things are a bit messy here, but as long as you stay on his good side, well, it's still pretty messy. I tried to say something nice about Dirty Hat Jack, but failed. Got it. That's forest ranger talk I'm not too familiar with, I muttered. The folklore about the mountain had landed me in this watchtower. Harry had nicknames for everyone not stationed in the towers. He called us ground squirrels, or ground crew. I always thought the nickname made no sense. We could climb trees, and trees were nature's watchtowers. But the name stuck. Those of us stationed in the towers, he called sandhill cranes flying high, eventually shortened to just killbirds. "Your shift schedule is a complete mess," I said. "You newbies need to learn to lie. You ground crew are all honest as priests, while I'm a master storyteller," came Gwen's voice, sounding more exasperated than usual. Gwen was stationed at Tower 5, about 30 kilometers northwest of me. He had this scholarly air about him, which made sense, since he used to be a scholar. We could easily annoy him, but we all liked him deep down. And deep down, he liked us too. I mean really deep down, like calling John Hammond to excavate ancient amber with insect specimens, deep. Let's not play teacher today, shall we? This trick is getting old. Haven't we had enough of the good old days? Gwen sighed, then added more. Even though I couldn't see him making that typical gesture, forming horns with both hands and charging at you, I knew he was doing it. The man was in his 50s with kids in college. All right. Gwen's right. The radio is for official communication. Killbird 3, over. Hat Jack, out. Happy shopping, Tower 5. Hope you get hit by a thunderstorm. Harry laughed. Man, I gotta say it again, this guy's got a mortgage to pay. Whenever I was on Tower 6 duty, I'd bring a book or two. The gentle swaying and quiet solitude at altitude let me get through quite a bit of reading. Right now I was working through a series of pocket-sized horror movies in book form. I just finished The Thing and The Mist, about to start The Blob. Next shift, I plan to tackle a set of 1940s pulp detective novels. Yeah, I don't have a girlfriend, that should be pretty obvious by now. Anyway, about an hour later, my radio suddenly came to life. Gwen's call was always very formal. Killbird 3 calling Killbird 5. Come in. What's up? Do you hear music? Music? What kind of music? Maybe it's another radio signal bleeding through. Maybe you've got fans out there who really want you to hear their favorite tunes from this year. Gwen, you can't just say stuff like that. There are all kinds of people in this world. Pearl was the name Gwen gave his pistol. All us mountain rangers carried something. In my daily life, I'm not really a gun person, but out here I knew it was an important tool. I didn't want to be cornered by a mountain lion with nothing to fend it off. Pearl had great aim. If you hear that sound again, try recording it with your phone. We tower guys can occasionally think of good ideas. Tower 3, over. I hung up the mic and walked to the north window. On clear days, I could see Tower 5 from here. It took some time, but I could always find it. There's an old saying, nature doesn't do perfect straight lines. Not entirely accurate, but mostly true, and useful for reconnaissance. That's the difference between nature and the man-made world. I scanned the horizon, looking for anything unusual, but everything seemed perfectly calm. The scenery here never changed and never disappointed me. I often sat outside on the platform, staring at nature for long stretches, lost in thought. To be a forest ranger, you not only needed the right reverence and respect for the wilderness, you had to truly love it. I heard electronic static behind me. Turning, I saw the light on the two-way radio in the cabin had lit up. I walked back and picked up the receiver. "This is Killbird 3. Go ahead." Nothing but hissing static on the line. No voices, no music, just an annoying buzz. I waited to see if anyone would respond. After staring at the speaker for 2 minutes, I figured it was a false alarm. I leaned back in my chair and returned to my horror novel. I'd barely read 2 pages when Gwen's voice crackled again. I straightened up and grabbed the mic. "Killbird 3, received." I dragged the long, coiled cord to the window, looking in the direction he indicated. I shaded my eyes against the glare on the glass, but saw nothing. I pressed the talk button. "I don't see anything." "What don't you see?" "What thing?" "A helicopter. Sometimes the fire department does flight tests on clear days." "That's not good. The fire department should be reachable by radio at all times. Especially if you're currently surrounded by a bunch of burnable wood. A single spark could start a wildfire, consuming an entire forest at a dizzying speed." "Should I try calling them?" Gwen said, his usually steady voice trembling slightly. "Sometimes they do flight training without notifying us. It's rare, but it happens." "It's gotta be that." "Definitely." Gwen repeated after me uncertainly. "Give me a few seconds. I'll switch frequencies and call them. Be right back." Killbird 3, over. I scanned the sky again but still saw nothing unusual. I knew Gwen, he was as reliable as his gun. If he said he saw something, he saw something. I switched to the fire department emergency channel and pressed the button. "This is Tower 3, National Forest Watchtower. Please respond." No one replied. I tried twice more. Still nothing. I switched through several channels, but no one responded. It was like they were deliberately ignoring me. I switched back to Gwen's channel and told him. He sounded unhappy. "Is it still in the air? Use the Osborne Fire Finder and tell me the reading." The Osborne Fire Finder was a fire detection tool in every watchtower cabin. It determined the position of something relative to the tower. It could rotate 360 degrees with a detailed map in the center. When we spotted smoke, we'd align the crosshairs on it, then find the corresponding reading on the side. A single tower's measurement was accurate enough, but if other towers also took readings and cross-referenced them, we could pinpoint the exact location. "Gwen," I said, adjusting the Osborne to that bearing and looking through the crosshairs. I'd previously set it to scan along the ridgeline, so it took me a few seconds to angle it toward the sky. I saw nothing with the naked eye. Then I noticed something reflecting sunlight. I see it. Not clearly, but there's definitely something there. Hard to say exactly what. Well, on that point, you're right. Try using your phone, maybe you can contact them through that. Always breaks when you need it most, right? Is it falling or landing? I can't see connected things. When it was in the air, I could barely make out a bit. If it's rapidly falling from the sky, I definitely can't see it. No signal. Let me try calling. I pulled out my phone to dial, but found I had no signal at all. Not even weak signal, completely blank, like the signal had been erased. I shook the phone, but still nothing. "Hey, I've got no signal either," I said into the radio. "Any change on your end?" I heard Gwen press the talk button, but he said nothing. I heard his handheld radio emit several clicks, then that melody, Mary had a little lamb started playing again. Finally Gwen said quietly, I hear it. The music suddenly stopped, replaced by a calm, almost robotic voice. Gwen and I sat silent as if in a church, listening to that voice. It stopped. My heart skipped a beat. Seconds later, the piercing Mary had a little lamb blared again. Like a number station, like those digital stations used by spies or government agencies. Maybe? Just my guess. Could also be someone's prank. Maybe the fire department guy's messing with us, Gwen said. We're not sure what's happening yet. I think we should write a report. Should we contact headquarters and have them send a ranger to your location? If you're lucky, it might be Harry. I said this to lighten the mood. To those who didn't know him, Gwen might sound calm, but I knew he was frightened, at least very uneasy. I was scared too, though I didn't want to say it out loud. Gwen laughed, but it sounded more like crying. Maybe we should encourage him, so our ears can get a break, he said, imitating Harry's tone. Gwen, that's a man with kids in college. That's a good. A low rumbling suddenly interrupted our conversation, followed by a slow earthquake that began shaking our watchtower. I quickly grabbed the table. The entire cabin swayed back and forth like a small boat caught in heavy waves. Though it felt like 10 hours, the shaking stopped after just 30 seconds. Gwen, you okay? Just as I was mentally noting to check later if earthquakes had occurred in this area, I noticed that about 2 kilometers away, the forest began violently swaying back and forth in a circular pattern, like someone had dropped a pebble in water. That shockwave making the trees sway spread rapidly outward. Before I heard the sound, I could already feel the impact. The watchtower shook again, violently. Several windows shattered, glass shards flying into the room. I quickly ducked under the table where the radio sat, to avoid being riddled with glass. After the wave passed, I quickly stood and turned to the south window. I could clearly see the shockwave pushing through the trees toward Gwen's direction. You okay? No response. Gwen, please respond. Over. Still nothing. Panic began rising. If he was too close to the epicenter, his tower might have collapsed. He could be injured, or, I didn't want to think further. I tried calling a third time, but got no response. My personal radio suddenly crackled to life. It was Harry. His voice sounded equally tense and confused. I don't know what's happening, but I can't reach Gwen. Something fell from the air, then landed or crashed near his tower. We tried contacting fire rescue, but no one's responding. Then it hit the ground, or maybe landed. We also heard a strange. The two-way radio in the cabin started emitting intermittent static. I turned up the volume and heard clicking sounds and low rumbling laughter. At first the sound seemed random, then I realized many different things were making clicking and rumbling sounds. Then a piercing high-pitched electronic shriek erupted. I clamped my hands over my ears. The sound lasted about 10 seconds. I heard the cabin's remaining windows crack but not fall. When the sound stopped, I released my ears, but the ringing in my head wouldn't fade. My head felt submerged in water, my ears like after swimming. I shook my head, pressing my thumbs into my ear canals, trying to equalize the pressure. I heard Harry shouting frantically through my radio, saying something incomprehensible, but I could barely hear anything. I took a deep breath and refocused. Received. I heard something in the cabin's radio that sounded like someone making clicking sounds or strange speech. The two-way radio speaker crackled again with more clicks, but this time it was clearly deliberate, like sending a signal to someone. The sound was oddly familiar, though I had no idea why. At first I couldn't identify it. Soon I realized, it was mimicking the melody of Mary Had a Little Lamb. What the? I stared at the speaker. I stared hard at that little box, wishing it would turn into a TV screen so I could see what was making those sounds. Just then, I saw that object rise from the forest again, pause in midair like it was hovering, then suddenly shoot toward me. Oh shit! I dove under the table. The thing flew past the top of the tower at an unimaginable speed, shaking the entire structure. Harry was screaming frantically through my radio, saying a bunch of stuff I didn't catch. I rushed to the outdoor walkway to see where it went. At that speed, it could already be on the other side of the earth. The moment I pushed open the door, the surrounding air suddenly became heavy and thick, slowing my movements like Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. I even wondered if hopping would be faster. I looked up and found everything slightly distorted, like seeing gasoline vapors shimmer in daylight. Though I couldn't see anything overhead, I knew that object was right above me. Which meant it had to be hovering in place. And as far as I knew, nothing could do that. The radio in the cabin started making noise again, just static at first, quickly becoming that melody I'd heard several times today, "Mary Had a Little Lamb." I realized it was mimicking the signal Gwen and I had both heard. Suddenly, the pressure vanished. The air returned to normal. Whatever had been hovering nearby had left. Harry was still shouting through the radio. I ran back inside and grabbed it. Before I could respond, my eyes involuntarily swept to the north window. I saw a thin column of smoke on the horizon, very, very close to Gwen's tower. My heart rate instantly spiked. "Harry, there's smoke near the tower. I can't reach Gwen or the fire rescue team." I looked again toward where I'd seen the smoke, but that thin column had become a thick plume, or more accurately, it looked like a dense, pea soup-like fog. It was about 2 kilometers wide and still expanding outward. Normal flames couldn't spread that fast. "Harry, I don't know what's happening, but I don't think this is a fire." "Where?" "Toward the horizon, and it's still growing." "Damn." The cabin radio suddenly came to life with a clear, well-recorded message. The speaker was the Secretary of Agriculture, the administrator of all national forests. In a calm, steady tone, he said, "Attention all personnel. You must remain in position. Anyone attempting to leave the dead zone will be considered a hostile unit. Stay in place and cooperate with all military personnel." The message appeared and disappeared like a sudden storm. I wasn't sure what that smoke or fog actually was, but I was certain it wasn't just a rapidly spreading forest fire, it was something else entirely. Code Black Alert. Be careful with weapons and fog. Stay connected. My mind raced. What did Code Black mean? Why send the military? Harry didn't finish his sentence, but we both understood. Ever since Gwen stopped responding, that thought had been in my head too. "Okay, you go. Stay safe," Harry said, trying to add some lightness to the tense atmosphere. I usually joked around with Harry, but this was where he truly showed his worth. He genuinely cared about our well-being. I appreciated him trying to help me relax, but neither of us could laugh now. I walked back to the walkway, staring at the approaching fog. It was so thick. As it slowly advanced, trees gradually disappeared into the mist. The thought of Gwen made my stomach twist into knots. I'd been worried whether the tower had collapsed, but compared to the current situation, the tower falling seemed almost trivial. Was he alive? Would whatever Code Black involved hurt him? The fog was moving faster and faster. My questions would have answers soon enough. I swallowed hard, running my hand through my disheveled hair. I wanted to help, but had no idea what I could do. Would the military arrive quickly? Would I be forced to join their operation? The radio in the cabin emitted another piercing shriek, then I heard a familiar voice begin speaking through the static, Gwen's voice. I ran inside and grabbed the radio, nearly yanking it off the wall. "Gwen. Are you okay? What happened?" I sat on the floor, feeling short of breath. "What are they?" "What things?" Gwen said quietly. I held my breath, waiting. He'd already locked the door at the bottom of the tower leading to the stairs. If they climbed up, Gwen would have nowhere to go. My heart was pounding. I felt like I might pass out. I tapped my fingers on the floor, hoping to hear Gwen's voice again. He whispered softly. I wanted to respond, but I knew the moment I spoke, his speaker would light up like a beacon, revealing his position. So I said nothing. Gwen kept the talk button pressed. I could hear everything in his cabin. I wasn't sure if it was accidental or if he wanted someone to record what was happening to him. I could hear Gwen's heavy breathing and the occasional rustle of fabric. I imagined him crouched under the table, holding the radio's coiled cord. Sweat dripped down my forehead onto my cheeks. A second later, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Those clicking sounds I'd heard before, distant at first, but now dozens of different voices approaching. The things had surrounded the tower. Please tell me you locked the door, Gwen. Please, you locked the walkway door, I muttered to myself. As long as he just held down the mic, none of my sounds would reach his speaker. Smart. I hope he made the smart decision. The thought spun in my head, but I still smiled. You clever bastard, I whispered, almost inaudibly. The radio cut out. No sound, no static, no signal from his two-way radio. I pressed the button and whispered, "Can you hear me?" No response. The radio at Gwen's tower had gone completely offline. I rushed to my portable radio, but knew its signal couldn't reach Gwen's location. He was now an isolated island, completely cut off from the human world. I suddenly stood and ran to the cabin's walkway. That fog wall was closing in, bit by bit. I thought of Harry. Right now he was driving toward it like a fool, headlong into danger. He needed to turn around immediately, but I couldn't reach him anymore. My heart ached, that man had a family. There was nothing I could do now except prepare for the approaching fog. I closed the walkway door and moved the few pieces of furniture in front of the open windows. Not to stop those things from getting in, but merely to slow them down. I could only hope the military actually had a plan. I drew my pistol, chambered around, and watched the dense fog roll toward me. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if any of us would survive. I didn't know if these things could even be stopped. I turned to face the area several miles away from the fog, taking in the scenery. The view here was truly beautiful.